Hello, this is your presentation about the principles of design. The lesson objective is to demonstrate an understanding of the principles of design by identifying its use in artwork and applying it visually in a variety of ways. So the principles of design are rules that govern how the elements are used and organized. They are not the elements of design. Students often mix them up, which is totally normal, but they are two separate set of concepts. The elements of design are all the little building parts of the artwork. The principles of design is like the instructions on how to put the artwork together. We're going to start with unity. This is the feeling of harmony between all parts of the artwork, which creates a sense of completeness. This means we use the elements of art in a way that just makes everything make sense, right? In this painting here, we see a lot of the same colors. We see a lot of oranges, blues, greens, and browns. But we can also say there is unity created by shape. We see lots of leaf shapes, as well as some of these shapes of the horse's feet. Let's explore the use of unity in three ways. So for unity by color, what you'll do is just draw a series of circles, make sure they're different sizes. Now what unifies them by color is we're going to color them all the same color. In this example, I'm using red. You can use any color you want, but they should be all the same color. For unity by size, I'm going to draw more circles, but try to make sure they're the same size, but they're different colors. So a couple of them are red, and I'm going to color these orange and add a few different colors. For unity by contrast, I'm going to draw a series of circles, make sure they're all the same size, but what unifies them is the contrasting colors. So I'm going to use yellow and a darker color, and I'm going to color in some of these circles yellow, and then the other circles are going to be colored with a darker color. So contrast is the unifying principle here. The use of contrast helps unify the design. Our next word is emphasis. This is also known as the center of interest, right? If I asked you, what's creating emphasis in this artwork? You'd be saying, all right, the center of interest is. So in emphasis, this is where your eye goes first when viewing an artwork. So for example, in this composition, your eye likely looks at the orange and warm colors versus the black and white triangles. In this installation here, your eye probably focuses on that black center because it's contrasted against the yellow. So emphasis is not always a bright color. It can be something dark as well. Now these two paintings use emphasis in different ways. In this illustration here, your eye likely goes to that green tomato first because it stands out against all of the red tomatoes, even though the colors are very similar. For emphasis, we're exploring the use of emphasis in four different ways. For size, I'm going to draw a large triangle and draw a much smaller triangle. So the size, the larger triangle, becomes emphasized. For contrast, I'm going to draw a medium-sized triangle and put a larger triangle behind it. Now I'm going to color that larger triangle a darker color. The white triangle in front, even though it is smaller, that contrast creates emphasis. Our eye wants to look at the white triangle more easily. For shape, let's draw a large triangle and two smaller circles. For placement, I'm going to draw a series of triangles, but there's one triangle going down. So the triangle that's moving downward, and it's a little more bunched up here, the placement, creates emphasis. Our eye wants to look there first. You are welcome to add color to these if you want. In art, we also explain the way that elements are used to create balance. This is how elements are arranged to create a feeling of equal visual weight. So in 2D art, drawing and painting, when we talk about balance, we talk about the way things are arranged. We're not talking about physical balance. So with symmetrical balance, this is when elements on both sides of the artwork appear to be equal in shape, value, and color. So this painting here, this is fairly symmetrical. There are eyes on each side of the face. If we were to split the artwork in half, it's pretty much the same on both sides. Symmetrical balance can also be like this, where it's truly symmetrical, kind of like a butterfly. It's the same on both sides. Another type of balance is called asymmetrical balance. This is when an artwork has uneven balance. Both sides have unequal visual weight. One side of the artwork is visually heavier than the other. So in this painting here, the flowers are on the left side. That side appears more visually heavy versus the right side that is relatively empty. As you can see in this composition, it doesn't mean there's nothing there. So for example, in this artwork, the red tree on the right is definitely has more weight than the moon on the other side. Another type of balance is called radial balance. This is an arrangement that results from the repetitive placement of elements radiating out from a central point. Think of a flower. Most flowers have a center and there's things radiating outward. So yes, it does appear fairly symmetrical, but we can also say that the balance is radial. All right, variety. This is using many types of elements in an artwork. This adds interest to your artwork. So this means you're using different shapes, forms, colors, different types of lines, different sizes of shapes and forms. But we can also say there's a variety of an idea. For example, in this painting here, there are a variety of cakes and desserts, though they all look fairly similar in form because there are a lot of cylinders. This painting here uses a variety of colors, a variety of shapes. With variety, you can use different shapes, textures, colors, values. You're just combining these elements in different ways. Let's explore variety in 3 different ways. So variety of lines. This is where you're just going to draw a variety of lines and make sure they're going different directions. They might be dotted, they might be little loopy loops, but just show a variety of lines being used with some thick lines, thin lines, all different types of lines. For a variety of shapes, let's make a drawing with lots of shapes. Now, obviously I'm repeating some of them, but I'm trying to show a variety. There's triangles, there are right triangles, there's rhombuses. So just a variety of shapes. Variety of colors. Easy way to do this is just to draw a bunch of shapes, make sure they're different colors and different shapes. There's our example of a variety of colors. Directional movement. This is how your eye moves around the composition. Your eye begins somewhere and ends somewhere else. So in this collage here, your eye likely starts at the red dot and then spirals its way out, or maybe your eye starts at the bottom and follows it to the red dot. In this photograph here, your eye is likely following the pathway of the road into the dead center of the photograph. With directional movement, we're trying not to have the viewer's eye get stuck in one place. That is something artists frequently think about when they're making a drawing or painting. Now, in 2D art, there's also optical movement. This is creating the illusion of movement. So think of optical illusions, where your eye thinks something is moving, but it's actually not. And in art, there's also actual movement. This occurs in works of art called kinetic art. This is art that would move, maybe due to a motor or to the wind or the air, so it's physically moving. Our next principle of design is rhythm. This is repeating elements in a regular fashion to create interest, movement, and unity. Yes, principles of design can create other principles of design. They often go together. Movement and rhythm frequently go together. So here there's a sense of rhythm due to the repeating Campbell soup cans. Here there is a sense of rhythm due to the way the lines kind of bounce around across the painting. When we have rhythm, it just looks like that things look active in the artwork. Things are moving around. Let's create 4 different ways of making rhythm. Flowing. This is where there's just lines just flow. It could be shapes, could be forms, but we're just going to draw lines and they just flow really nicely. Progressive. Progressive rhythm is where something is getting bigger and smaller, and it doesn't have to go horizontally. So I could do these lines that are getting longer as they spiral outward. That's progressive rhythm. Random rhythm is a little more hard to explain, but it just means there's like things moving everywhere. Things are kind of random, but there's still a sense of visual movement. Regular rhythm. Think of a heartbeat. So something's repeating in a regular fashion. And then there's pattern. Pattern is similar to rhythm, But pattern is when elements repeat at regular intervals. This is to help unify and organize the artwork. We could be repeating objects, symbols, or motifs. So this image here, yes, it uses radial balance, but it has a sense of pattern because of the repeating flower shapes and the repeating colors. All different types of pattern. Pattern usually has rhythm, but rhythm does not have to be a pattern. These are examples of motifs. A motif is like a little design that's repeated. We often see this in clothing. And rhythm and patterns, they can create directional movement. So for example, these dots, they repeat from the center and they go outward. These waves, right, they create a sense of directional movement. Our next word is contrast. This is a difference between two or more elements in a composition. It is a juxtaposition of elements. We are comparing or showing a difference between two elements. Here, there's definitely contrast of color as well as here. And in drawing and painting, contrast can also be used in terms of light and dark. You can actually adjust the contrast of your photos on your phone. So when we talk about contrast, sometimes it's how dark or how light something is. Now, when we talk about contrast, we can also talk about ideas and things, such as this pink cement truck or this cracked wall with these satellites on top. Here are two ways to explore contrast. So we can have two shapes, and I'm going to color this one dark, and then I'm going to color the background the same color. So there's a contrast of dark and light. Contrast by color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a yellow circle and I'm going to add blue around it. And that blue will contrast with the yellow. Our last word is proportion. Proportion is the size relationships of the parts to the whole work of art. So in this photo, we have this cityscape with a giant fortune cookie. And so we know the proportion of the fortune cookie is big. It's large in scale. Scale is the relative size of one object to another object in an artwork. They basically go together, size and scale, talking about proportion. In this clothing here, the model is wearing this giant cowl. It looks like a cowl or a scarf. It's huge. The proportions look ridiculous. If we were to think about The Simpsons, and if Homer Simpson was a real person, we know the proportions would be totally not correct. And often with drawing and painting, if you want to draw humans or people or figures, you often have to think about proportions, because if you don't draw them in a proportional way, they look a little odd. For realism, we can think about it this way. When you draw a human, right, we typically want them to be realistic proportions, right? So sometimes when they talk about drawing a person, they say their average person is like 6 or 7 heads tall. Right? That is realism. We're trying to create the realistic proportions. Exaggeration. Think about in cartoons, right? A lot of cartoons, the character has a big head, small body. Another way to exaggerate it is big body, tiny head. There's an exaggeration of proportions. Face. So typically when we draw the face, we typically try to draw things in half, and we try to place certain parts of the face in certain areas. So we have the nose, there's an area for where the mouth is going to go, we have a spot for the eyes. There's a whole trick to drawing faces using these lines to kind of make sure that everything is proportional, right? Even thinking about where the ears are located, how the hair kind of falls on the face.